to natural resources. It is not by hazard that droughts hit regions in Sudan or in Ethiopia or in Somalia where conflict actually is much more strongly heard, where the disenfranchisement from political power structures of people is also an issue. So the World Humanitarian Summit is not going to scratch around the surface or over the surface. It's going to get deep into the determinants of vulnerabilities, in what really drives vulnerabilities. And the vulnerabilities, ultimately, and for UN officers and practitioners and for people that work in the humanitarian and the development world, we know very well that while we are providing humanitarian responses and development responses, the real change can only happen through political decisions.
Thank you, Roberto. Okay, if no more questions or comments from the floor, any last-minute thoughts? Yes, please, Excellency. Can you please, come closer to the mic? Yes.
But allow me to answer in bahasa. First, yang pertama saya.
So I would like to answer the question of Ms. Adelina. We know that disasters is getting more complex because of the climate change, because of political reasons, because of environment. It is getting much more complex. And for that, we need to face this with innovations, as mentioned by the panelists. And regarding the World Humanitarian Summit, I think this is also an effort to get innovations to resolve these complex cases. We know that not all, or it is impossible for us to encourage all the countries to comply with this. But what we can do is to convince them that this is the right thing. And I also scrutinize, we see that this has been a very lengthy process. I see that this process is much more important because the process to resolve a problem should have communication, to have better coordination. So I emphasize on our experiences in Indonesia in trying to resolve the case or trying to enhance our capacity in mitigating disasters and also to mitigate the risks of disasters. So there should be inclusive partnership from all the communities. We understand that. We understood that after the Aceh disaster, they used to be fragmented, divided, but now we try to talk with them, reason with them, and now the center is now in the BNPB, or the National Mitigation for Disasters of Indonesia. So we try to look at the problems from all angles. But I'm talking about the disasters. We have a very strong platform now with Sendai, with Hyogo for disasters problem. It's okay. But how can we try to include this disaster issue into the humanitarian problems? Maybe not in this opportunity everybody can be on board, but maybe through this kind of process in the next 2 to 3 times, maybe all can agree that this is the best for us to resolve these problems. The target is to save more lives, and this should be done all together, coexistingly. And without doing this simultaneously, we cannot succeed, even though we know that there are many interests, but we have to convince ourselves that with this togetherness, we can do this. And regarding this very complex issue regarding disasters, as previously presented, I see we should have a breakthrough or an innovation in terms of technology. I was just invited by the IEAE in Vienna, where my colleagues in the nuclear technology department also support us. How? By modifying or the isotope technology, how they can develop rice paddy fields that can actually withstand drought or extreme drought or extreme flood. We can use that technology. We should try that technology, something like that. So if a region is experiencing flood and submerged for 3 to 4 days, they can still produce these rice. So that is for food security. And also on how we can try to share knowledge by using the current technology or with our togetherness. And a good innovation regarding the financial system or about zakat, Indonesia every year, according to my data, spends 1.6% up to 3.8% of the total of GDP of Indonesia, meaning every year we collect around 13.8 billion US dollars and up to 33.2 US dollars from the 2 zakat institutions that we have in Indonesia. And all of this money is used for humanitarian problems, 34% of it. So it means in Indonesia, every year, we use this for humanitarian causes for 5 until 11 billion US dollars. So we have already practiced this. So if we can actually move the people, if the national government can convince this with good accountability, good reporting, I believe that is our strength. So the strength is not only from the government, but also from the community. If we can trigger that in the right way, the social capital can be utilized, and I believe we can actually reduce the vulnerability far much better. Thank you.
For raising these important issues on the role of technology. Yes, Doctor, you want to add on?
I'd like to make just 2 minutes comments.
Yes,
first of all, I'd like to emphasize that first, division of labor. We have to concentrate to our own capacity, but at the same time, we have to be able to also embark in the comprehensive and systematic initiatives. Lastly, what is luxurious, particularly, well, just to self-critic, in the OIC country, is the commitment for establishment. Because, you know, everything starts with a small thing of a 1,000-mile journey. A step of a 1,000-mile journey, meaning that if we want to start something, we have to be ready that, you know, the results can be seen not by us. Even, you know, grandchildren of us will enjoy. And, well, again, like, for example, what is on earth the central bank is trying to help zakat, for example. We have, for example, we can be very happy in Indonesia, tens of free hospital finance, and including one in Gaza. It's coming from Indonesian people, not the government. I mean, we just want to show that with good governance, we can do more. And then, for example, from the governmental perspective, one question should be raised. If you want to be trusted, and how can we bring, you know, our initiative very properly? like for example, I can just sell this idea, for example, to the president. If zakat and wakaf is developing further at the macro economy level, we can share our contribution. At least certain percentage for health facility will be, sustained by the sector. What is significant savings, sir, for the government? Meaning that from the balance of payment and then from the, let's say, the fiscal policy, this is the relief that we can enjoy together. This is the way how can convince very professionally and then ultimately and hopefully Islamic finance, particularly this social sector, which shows very significant amount of, and not only for consumption. For example, we have already introduced Mustahik to Muzaki transforming program. This is to measure how successful a zakat institution can collect and make the people empowered by this sector. I mean, with those kind of approach, and then to make this program and initiative being understood by others, particularly for decision maker, it will be very, very much beneficial to our, to the building up of the resilience of economic development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Muljawan, for elaborating on these important issues. So to close, or before we wrap up, may I invite Brother Mansour to give us the takeaways from this seminar.
Bismillah, thank you very much. It's very difficult to summarize because it's extremely rich. And in spite of that, I'll try to depict the key messages that have come across during this session. The first set of messages say that there are problems without passports that are having very difficult dimensions, and we need to address them. Here, the presenters have talked about occupation as an example of fragility. They have talked about natural disasters, and they have talked about national conflicts. And at the same time, there have been messages related to ex ante, before the crisis, within the crisis, how to respond quickly and how to get out of it quickly, and how to make sure that in the future it will not be repeated. This is actually somehow certain dimensions of resilience. The messages are clear here that the world that we are living since 2008, we started by having a financial crisis, then an economical crisis, and then the metamorphosis of crisis have come in a humanitarian crisis. So we are living in a crisis world, a world of uncertainty, and unfortunately, the Muslim world is taking a huge percentage, a huge share of the world humanitarian caseload. We are having a huge component, unfortunately, of this crisis. Ebola was in the Muslim world, Zika not probably, but Syria is an unprecedented in terms of magnitude in the world, and it is, of course, within the Muslim world. In this message, of course, we have heard some estimates of the extent of the displacement, our share in it, etc. I will not come to that. The second set of messages says that, after all, we can be in control. A little arithmetic came to say, on one side, the disasters are, or the damage that we are seeing is composed of two aspects. One is the extent of the hazard. The other one is our preparation. This means that 50% is in our hands, the preparedness. The other 50%, yes, is not in our hands, but as it was said here, earthquakes do not kill, but unsafe buildings do. Drought cannot be avoided, but famine is evitable. This is, I think, the message. So 50% is in our hands in terms of how we prepare ourselves. Another idea came that, well, we are living, there is a vicious circle and vicious cycle and some kind of synergy, unfortunately, between natural disasters and conflicts. We will see probably when the United Nations is holding the whistle, blowing the whistle about the situation in Gaza. How the siege and blockade, and on one side, and on another side, the water bed situation are cooperating to increase the suffering of people in Palestine. How in Sudan and Somalia, the drought and the conflicts are also cooperating to make people suffer more and more. This collusion is, of course, all these aspects are discussed largely by the report that was referred to by Ambassador Musa today, which is a background report prepared by CESRIC in cooperation with the Islamic Development Bank to discuss more aspects of these fragilities. The third set of messages coming out from this room is that countries and aid agencies are almost part of the problem. They are failing to respond adequately. If you are not able to solve a problem, you are part of it. Although there are certain exceptions. Yes, how much our ministries of planning, our ministries of finance are really prioritizing the resilience within the pyramid of priorities when it comes to putting new projects for financing or spending on new projects. That is the responsibilities of the countries. Aid agencies, the aid architecture is not fit for the new situation. There has been a call to redesign the aid architecture to be more amenable to strengthening resilience. Of course, based on this, there have been a call to work during the World Humanitarian Summit to have a better share in terms of resource allocation globally to the resilience. And the example has been given by one of our presenters about how much we spend on, what is it? Ice cream. I don't eat it. On ice cream as compared to the resilience. This is something, and the figure has been, two figures have been advanced. 107 trillion is the size of the GDP of the world, and 25 billion is only what would have been needed to decently respond to the financial challenge. The next set of messages is saying that resilience is a political agenda. It's a political responsibility. It's an accountability that stays first in the apex of the pyramid. Within the country, there has to be a leadership, and there is an example that has been praised. Indonesia has been praised for taking responsibility to strategically work on its own ability to resist disasters and to respond. Actually, this is something, a very good example that we need to emulate, to copy, and we need Indonesia and those countries that have built excellent capacity in response to provide their experience, to avail their knowledge to the sister member countries to make them also as resilient. So resilience is a global political issue also. Why? The globe, the leadership of the globe should take responsibility about the problems within the globe. There are certain problems that cannot be handled locally. The example we mentioned before has come once again in 2020. That is in the next few years. Gaza will not be livable. 97% of the water at that is available for drinking is not valid, is not potable, is not good for human consumption. 97%. The water table is going to collapse in 2020. That means that not only 10,000 are going to try to immigrate, but 2 million people are in that jail, which is the biggest jail in the world. Gaza and water situation, there should be the UN system has been blowing the whistle since many years, and the rendezvous, unfortunately, the timeline is very, very, very near. Another important message is that we need to address the root causes. We need to innovate. We need to change the way we have been addressing the resilience and the fragility. The way that we have been working in the past is not fit for the future. Yes, there have been good news that Indonesia has performed very well. That was the entire system, a response system has a very strong response system has been built. One thing very important was said here, that we are very good at assessing the damage, but that's not what is needed. Need assessment or damage assessment is not what is required. What is required is to have the analysis, why we have come there, why this has happened, how we can prevent it in the future. So the need assessment is considered a bit negative or neutral, while we need a proactive and positive approach. Another set of messages says that if we are targeting that no one is left behind, we should also target that no one is left alone. No one is to work alone. And every country should look at its neighborhood. They can only be resilient in as much as the neighborhood is resilient as well. You are as strong as not only your weakest link, but the weakest link in your neighborhood. Ebola moved without passport from a country to another. So do the floods and the drought. There is a need to work jointly to have a joint and mutual strength and working together. Here, of course, there has been a call to say it's not only no one is left behind. It's not, let's see, to make sure that no one is left behind, but let's see how many people, many people say, let's measure the effectiveness of our work by the outreach. How many people we have been able to reach? We need also to think how many people we have not been able to reach. And that is why we will be looking for people in Gaza, people in Palestine, people in everywhere where the prosperity has not been able to reach. We need also to be more anticipative in our thinking. We need to involve the youth and the women. Youth, we are called upon to work for the peace and prosperity of our grandchildren, not only for today. The thinking for the current should be replaced for the thinking for the future. And we need to develop our leadership in terms for this situation. I think I also mentioned, I think that we need to fix our backyard. The Muslim community, the Muslim world should look into the backyard and fix the problems first, and before addressing, of course, the World Humanitarian Summit and influencing it. But it's very important to influence the World Humanitarian Summit to send a message that what is happening is the responsibility of the entire world. We need to think that everyone's problem is everyone's problem. Anyone's problem is everyone's problem. And we need to create a response mechanism. There has been a praise of the Gavi mechanism as a way that has been able to develop sukuk for humanitarian purposes. The social Islamic finance is huge, rich. In Indonesia, Zakat has been able to mobilize $13 billion, and with a better reporting, with more engagement, we can have more. This is just an example. We need to be ready to work for the prosperity of our grandchildren, to set some objectives and work for achieving them in terms of resilience. We need to diagnose each country, each region, each community should diagnose the state of resilience it has and build a plan to respond and to rebuild the resilience. One thing I want to close with. In the Soviet Union, there was once a parade on the National Day. On that parade, there were warfare, planes, tanks, every type of war equipment was being seen in the parade. And somewhere towards the end of the parade, there were some bureaucrats, people like me, with their bags, who are following the tanks. And the chief of army got a signal from the president to ask him, what are these people doing? Who are these people within the list of warfare? He told him, Excellency, these are the development workers. If they don't do their work, they work properly, they are as destructive as the warfare. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Mansour, for this very light way of ending this takeaways. Very important. And let's now invite His Excellency, the Deputy Minister, Wisnu Widaja, to give a closing remark before we close.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, allow me to convey my remarks in Bahasa. Please use your interpreter.
Firstly, on behalf of the government of Indonesia, I would like to extend my highest appreciation. Thank you to IDB with the initiative to hold this event related to enhancing resilience in IDB member countries, humanitarian and development nexus. It was mentioned that this is a very complex problem. It is intertwined. And if we talk about resilience, about vulnerability, we have to see that risks are functions of hazards, threats. It is also part of vulnerability and capacity. What we can strive for, what we can change, is at the vulnerability level and the capacity level. For hazard, particularly natural hazards, it's given. We could not stop the tsunami. We could not stop a volcano from erupting. We could not stop an earthquake. But to come up to a resilient community, it is the function of a physical condition, social condition, and the economic condition, and the environmental condition. We are working in an environment, in a global environment, in the world. And what we do affects the others. It means that disasters, crisis is unlimited. What we do in one place can affect another place or can affect another country. It's a borderless world. And for that, this kind of initiative, the initiative to invite all of you to jointly respond and address crisis, I believe this is a very good initiative on how we can try to resolve the world's problems. And the impacts that happen were mentioned in the panelists' presentations. Currently, we may not really be aware of, feel that, but in Syria, we know it's happening. But it will then affect all of us because with the technology that is developing, it's about change. One thing that is happening in one country can affect others in another country and could also affect the economic crisis, and an economic crisis could also affect vulnerability. And then there will be a disaster. So this is by looking at the risk factor. And that is why I would like to invite all parties to continuously commit jointly to jointly strive and collect our contribution for innovation, use our resources, mobilize our resources in a directed and well-planned manner. Because in Indonesia, we have prepared to strengthen and to achieve resilience, we have to strengthen our policies and regulations. And the national policy, we have national policies, and maybe for international, there are international policies. So we do it all together, not a top-down way. And the second, we have to also strengthen our regulations as part of our institution. So who will do what? For us, we have the National Disaster Board, and we had to face the tsunami back then, so we do not want to wait for another catastrophic or dramatic event that makes us unaware. And we have learned from experience, and that is why we have that institution. So we could also have a regional institution or maybe an international relation on mitigating disasters. And the third, about planning. In disasters, we have disaster management, so it means that we should have a plan. Also for the global level, we should have a planning. And the fourth, about financing, funding. I have heard a number of innovations and ideas for the future to anticipate the risks and threats in the future, including the Islamic countries. We have a traditional mechanism, a faith-based mechanism, and we should utilize all these innovations to anticipate something that may have not come now, but something that we can predict. As a nation, as a country, as a resilient country, we should be able to anticipate funding. And lastly, the subsystem is capacity development. We should work on that together. A disaster is unique. There is no same disaster from one place to another. And there's no one medicine that can cure all. And that is why we need to share. Not always investing on too much on one thing, but we can share our knowledge. And this is the functions of partnership on engaging all parties to address this common problem. And the goal is prosperity. So vulnerability and resilience is closely intertwined. So we know that if there is low prosperity, then because there's low resilience. So we should be able to increase our capacity to anticipate all that. And this is a very basic framework, a very basic concept. So I believe if we agree on this, we can resolve these problems and head towards our prosperity to be towards a much better world than now. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I think that is all from us for this morning. Once again, I would like to extend my highest gratitude to all the panelists, to all the organizers, and also particularly to IDB for organizing this event. I think that is what I can say. So I hope that I officially close the session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Excellency, for these closing remarks. Now we have token of appreciation to the speakers. First, His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Abdul Wahid Al-Maytami, the Minister of Planning and International Cooperation, Governor, IDB Governor. Next, His Excellency Bernandes Wisnu Udaja, the Deputy Minister of Indonesia National Agency for Disaster Management. Next, His Excellency Ambassador Musa, Director General of SESRIC. Next. Your Excellency, Tan Sri Jamila. Dr. Dadang Muljawan, Deputy Director, Macro Prudential Policy, Bank Indonesia. Last but not least, Mr. Roberto Valent, the Special Representative to UNDP. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. وبالله التوفيق والهداية والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Hello. Hello. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is a small announcement to all of you inside in the hall. There are two events outside this hall. We have one orphan kafala program. We have a very good showcase of our program for the past 10 or 11 years for orphan kafala program. And secondly, we also have a program for Palestine. There's a lot of showcase over there. You can see a lot of contribution from people in Palestine under the program, DEEP program. So you all are invited to go to the exhibition over there to see all the showcase. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Basim Dudin from the Bright Families Economic Empowerment Program. I would like to call you to go to the exhibition to see the booths. We have a very beautiful booth for the Productive Families Economic Empowerment Program implemented by UNDP DEEP. So you are welcome to come to the booth.